How can you let go of control and trust the process? It is so tempting to want to control everything in our lives, but we often realize this doesn't work out and it only leads to frustration, disappointment, and being upset with our overall circumstances. So, how can we shift this and learn to let go? As many of you no doubt, I also struggled a lot with being overly controlling and learning to let go when things didn't work out the way I hoped they would. So, here in this episode, I'm going to share 10 tips to support you with cultivating this art of letting go. First place to begin is non-resistance. I often think of the Taoist concept Wu Wei, which is literally going with the flow of life. To support us to do this, we need to stop labeling everything as good and bad. Each time we place a judgment on a given situation and label it good or bad, this makes us feel more resistant to the circumstances that we see as bad and more desiring and clinging towards what we label as good. Instead, we just need to embrace the circumstances as they are and ask ourselves, what can we do? What action can we take? What thought can we have in this process? I often like to use the analogy of playing cards, maybe playing poker, and ask myself, with the cards I've been dealt, what is my next big move? Instead of asking, why was I dealt these cards in the first place? Which is then coming more from a victim mindset perspective and also makes us feel low and bitter towards the cards we've been dealt. So what is the best you can do with the cards that you've been dealt? This is a non-resistant approach, just going with the flow of life and asking yourself, what is your next best step? The second aspect is to place your attention on things that you can influence. Stephen Covey talks about this in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and he explains that we have this circle of influence of things that we can impact, and then we have circle of concern, things that we worry about but we can't do anything about them. This could be world circumstances or the weather or other people's behaviors. And if you put all of your attention and focus on things that are outside of your control in that circle of concern, this will make you feel stressed, this will make you feel anxious, and also this will make you feel disempowered because these are things you can't control or do anything about. You will start to feel like, oh, there's nothing I can do about this, and it is a very disempowering feeling. Instead, we want to shift and look at what is within your circle of influence. And mostly the only things we can influence are thoughts, behaviors, and actions. What are you thinking about? What are some of your thought patterns, and trying to shift your perception in your own thoughts? And then looking, what are some actions you can take? What are some behavior patterns you can put in place to support you towards your goals, to support you towards living a more virtuous life, to support you to have great values that you're following? These are all things that are within your circle of influence. And the more you start to focus on this circle of influence, the more empowered you'll feel because this is something you can do something about. And I often think about Viktor Frankl, who's known for Man's Search for Meaning, and he explains that our greatest freedom is our freedom to choose our response to life's circumstances. He had an extremely challenging life circumstances and he was in the concentration camps, and he explains that our greatest freedom, the only one that we have left if everything is taken away from us, is our ability to choose our own response. And the more we focus on this, and this means choosing our response, how we answer in words to someone, the actions we take, our perception about circumstances, our emotional reaction and feelings, all of these are things within our control, and we can learn to place our focus on this circle of influence, feel more empowered, and remember that our greatest freedom is our ability to choose our response to life's circumstances. So instead of focusing too much on the circumstances themselves, we want to look at how we respond to them, and then from there maybe we can influence them or not. But the point is focusing on our own circle of influence. The third point comes back to what Eckhart Tolle talks about in The Power of Now, and this is presence. And here, if we're looking at letting go, we need to let go of the past and let go of the future. The more time we spend thinking about the past, the more we're likely to feel disappointment or regret or nostalgia. And if we're too much in the future, though it can be interesting to think about or visualize, often it can lead to anxiety or fear because we don't know what lies in the future. And instead, we want to put most of our attention on the present moment, choosing the present moment and thinking, in this current situation, what is my course of action? Coming back to what I mentioned earlier, with the cards I've been dealt, what is my next move? A natural unfolding of the present moment. I feel from all the different tools that can help us to let go and be less controlling and trust the process, this ability to be more present, to be more mindful, to be aware of our senses, and to let go of these expectations towards the future, these are the things that help us the most to be grounding and to be less controlling. And this helps us to be a little calmer within everyday life. The next important step is to have faith in the overall picture and feel gratitude for what we already have. Controlling often comes from the fact that we want certain things and we are in this phase of desire and clinging, and this means we don't appreciate what we already have. If, on the other hand, you shift this and you start to feel gratitude for where you are, for what you already have in your life, this will help you to feel a little calmer, but also to let go of this overall clingingness for more. One way to start to appreciate more what you have in your own life is to think of 5 things, circumstances, situations, objects, people that are in your life that you particularly love, and imagine your life without them. Imagine your life without that flower, without that person, or without an object you use a lot at home, whether it's a tech object or a book or something you really, really love in your life. And put all of these together in a nice package in your mind and just imagine your life without them. And then in this thought experiment, imagine them back within your life. And what often happens is, because subconsciously we take things for granted, if you imagine your life without them and then you imagine your life with them again, you feel this surge of gratitude and joy flooding through your body and through your mind. And this can really help you to not be as controlling about every little thing in life and realize that the big picture, the people in your life that you really care about, certain situations that are favorable for you, maybe some elements of your health that you're particularly happy about, or fitness, or even just having a nice home or some food that you particularly like. All of these things matter a lot more than being controlling about every little thing. But it's something we forget when we get caught up in daily life, and if we've developed a pattern of being too controlling. So pausing and creating and cultivating this feeling of gratitude can really support us to feel calmer, grounded, and to let go of clinging, pressure, and control. The next important element is non-attachment to outcomes. This is something I particularly struggled with because I am very goal-oriented, and if I didn't reach certain goals or outcomes, I would feel bitter and disappointed and angry and upset. So I know where you're coming from if you also struggle with this. The only way to pivot it is to put, again, all our focus and attention on the present moment and on the journey. And this takes practice. It's like a muscle. If you're used to being goal-oriented, attached to outcomes, it will take a little while for you to shift your compass and to start to focus a little more on the journey, to appreciate each step, and to ask yourself, what can I do about this? Now that I haven't reached this outcome, what would be my next step? What have I learned from this? How can I do this differently next time? Who can support me here? And go back. Of course, we can't totally let go of the fact that maybe you're also goal-oriented, but it's that attachment to outcomes. It's great to visualize goals, to have a vision, to want to achieve things in your life, but being too attached and too clinging to the outcomes often means that we force things and they don't work out the way we want it to work out. So instead, we want to shift back to appreciating the steps along the way, appreciating the journey, taking aligned action continuously and not clinging too much to those external outcomes. Then we want to be mindful of self-compassion, because if we're very controlling, it is often because we are very hard on ourselves and the world. We have these high expectations and we are very demanding. And this often is correlated to lack of self-compassion. The easiest way to think of self-compassion is look at your inner dialogue. Look at the things you say to yourself. Maybe you even say them out loud something. Oh, that was so stupid. Why did I do that? Can't believe I did that. How ridiculous. Those are all signs of an inner monologue. And instead, we want to really learn to shift it to like if you were speaking with a friend. Okay, that wasn't great. What can we learn here? What can I do better next time? At least I gave it a try. And this isn't something that comes naturally to a lot of us, especially if we're very self-critical and controlling. So it's something we practice. Sometimes we say it out loud. Great job. Now what can we do about this? At least you gave it a good shot. What is the best learning that you get from this circumstances, etc., etc. And so by shifting this inner dialogue and showing more self-compassion, this also helps us to let go. These high expectations, all that pressure, all that drive can really feel like a burden if it's something that you do continuously. So the ability to let yourself breathe a bit, show compassion for yourself, for the journey, for where you're at now. And interestingly enough, this actually supports you to be more driven and to do the next steps, because instead of beating yourself up, you're supporting and encouraging yourself. You're being your best cheerleader. And this is something that will encourage you to continuously progress towards your goals and ambition. Self-compassion isn't complacency. Self-compassion is your ability to support yourself, to be your best cheerleader, to be a friend towards yourself in your inner monologue, so that you can continuously make progress towards your goals without being too discouraged. And then we want to think about uncertainty and how we can embrace uncertainty. If we pause to think about it, we know that everything in life is uncertain, but we like to pretend it's not. We like to have a vision of the future as if there was some certainty behind it. And if we do this, this helps us to feel more comfortable and secure. But if you're learning to let go of expectations and be less controlling, things can feel more uncertain. So to support you to embrace that uncertainty, you can view uncertainty as possibilities, abundance, openness, different options that are available for you. What I've done in certain times of my life when things have felt very uncertain is I've painted a picture of what I would like my life to look like in the next 6 months, and I've visualized that image regularly, and this makes it feel less uncertain to me because I feel like I'm going towards this vision. Ultimately, it all comes down to our own imagination and how we choose to view circumstances and how we choose to view the future. When we do it this way, it helps us to embrace uncertainty, see it as lots of possible options ahead of us, and it helps us to let go of that challenge and that resistance that we sometimes have towards uncertainty and the future. Meditation is the best tool that you can use to help you to learn to let go, because during a meditation practice, when you're sitting with your eyes closed and you're focusing on your breath, you see your own thoughts go by. And as you do this, you learn to observe the thought and let it go. Observe the thought, maybe get carried away in it for a bit and let go. As you do this, you are naturally practicing your ability to let go of certain thoughts or emotions that can be really sticky, that stay there in our psyche and that we really struggle to let go of. And as you meditate regularly, you develop this ability to see the thought and let it go. See the thought and let it go. And then, because of your meditation practice during the course of the day, this can also support you to do the exact same thing. If a given circumstance or an emotion shows up, or you have a thought that is particularly sticky, you can let it go because you've learned how to do this during your meditation practice. You notice it, you become aware of it, you challenge it. Is this true? Is this something that I can do about? And then you let it go. I feel that out of all the tools that you can practice, I said this ability of being present was one of the most important ones. Directly correlated with this is the importance of having a meditation practice, because meditation practice and mindfulness, being fully present, go hand in hand. Through meditating, you develop your ability to let go of all these clinging thoughts, which then help you throughout the day to be more present because you're not so stuck in your mind the whole time. Meditation is a really strong support for mindfulness and for letting go and not being too controlling. And last but not least, two more important points. One of them is nature. We can learn a lot from nature, and this is something that I didn't really do much or think about in the last parts of my life, and it's only something that I've really come to realize in the last few months. We can learn from letting go and learn to be less controlling as we observe nature. Things like watching a river or looking at the waves or seeing that a tree is imperfect and all crooked reminds us that life doesn't need to be so rigid, so controlled, so perfect, and instead it can be a little more loose. And yet, if you think about nature, everything gets accomplished, everything gets done. There's no forcing, it's all a natural flow. We can learn from the seasons, we can learn from seeing a tree going from being totally bare to then having all its leaves. Pausing and spending time walking in nature, hiking in nature, in silence, really helps us to access sort of this inner wisdom that we all have and the wisdom of nature itself, and to realize this bigger picture. And the controlling is really limiting our world and forcing everything into a small rigid box, when in fact life is so flowy and abundant and filled and rich, and it is a great reminder when we spend time in nature. And the very last point is spend time focusing on your intentions and not your expectations. Put all of your focus on aligned actions that are linked to your intentions and what is important for you in your life. This is linked to what we said about not being attached to the outcomes, and it's also linked to what we were saying about being present. This ability to really put all our focus, all our energy on what is an intention, what is the direction we want to be going in. For this to happen, you need to look at some of your values, what's most important for you in your life, your core vision, having a really clear why, a strong purpose. All of these in-depth reflections will help you to figure out what is your intention. How do you want to spend each day? How do you want to spend your life? And not from a place of overly controlling, just from a vision perspective, an overview of what is most important for you and how you want to spend your life while going with the natural flow and not being too fixated on expectations. I hope this has been useful for you. We've covered a lot of main important points here. It's so important to think about why we cling, why we're so controlling, and how we can learn instead this wonderful art of letting go by not being too attached to outcomes, by being fully present, by practicing this non-resistance and stop labeling everything good and bad. All of these things can support us and remind us that control is overall just an illusion because we struggle with uncertainty and that everything is impermanent. And if instead we embrace it and we go with the flow of life, we feel so much more relaxed, and we also are more likely to achieve our goals and our vision because we're not forcing all along and instead we're flowing with life. Takes a lot of practice, but it's worth practicing because the rewards are phenomenal and we feel so much better and so much more fulfilled. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like, leave a comment, share with a friend or family member. And if you're listening on the podcast, leave a 5-star review, a comment. I read every single one and it's such a great support for the show. So thank you again for being here with me, and see you in the next episode.